Stories from My Life, Part 1. Born in 1992. Lived in a small farmhouse until I was 4 or 5, when we moved into a small town on the outskirts of a larger city. Began school in this little town, and as time went on, my parents began to fight. They both became dependent on non-prescribed prescription drugs, and Dad broke his 12 years of sobriety to deal with Mom. In the midst of all this, my sister, half-sister, from my mom's previous marriage and 7 years older than me, moved out and into her boyfriend's house, and eventually to her father's house, which is much further away. In the middle of my fourth grade year, Dad and I left to live with his mother out in the middle of nowhere. After Dad and I left, Mom also went to move in with her mother, about 2 hours from where Dad and I were living. She called me on the phone and asked if I wanted to live with her. I didn't know what to say. I was 10 years old at most, and I loved both of my parents. Not wanting to hurt her, I told her yes, and a few weeks later she came to get me. There was a custody battle, and Dad got to see me on weekends. At my new school, I was entered into the Gifted and Talented program, and I made a few friends, but I never really felt like I fit in. But I started playing soccer there, and that kept me busy. At the time, I had no idea that my father had begun using harder drugs as a result of me moving in with Mom. More on that later. After a while, my mom met a new guy. He seemed like a nice man, had 2 kids of his own from a previous marriage, and they hit it off well. Less than a year later, they got engaged, and we moved out of my grandmother's place into a new house, at least an hour or so away. I started school again in a new place, trying to make new friends. My dad kept driving the long distance to get me on the weekends, but I could tell it was taking a toll on his wallet. Also, it was during these weekends that other family members started hinting at me that my father had a drug problem. After a few months of living in the new place, the new guy began to be abusive toward my mother. Shortly thereafter, she and I left and moved in with her uncle, who happened to live very close to my father. Well, my great-uncle was and is a severe alcoholic, so that living arrangement didn't last long. We soon moved in with my mom's sister, who lived in another state, about a 6-hour drive from my dad. I was not happy about this new living situation, and my grades began to slip. I did everything I could to avoid going to my new school. I would still see my dad on weekends, but the extra distance made it even harder. Of course, my mom and her sister began fighting, and we eventually ended up moving back in with Dad. This was when the drug problem really came to light, as both he and Mom started doing the drugs together. This situation was toxic at best, and soon they began fighting again as before.